You woke up this morning and ate breakfast. Around noon, you probably took a break and grabbed lunch. And tonight, you will sit down for dinner. You did not question it. You never have. It just feels like the natural order of things, a rhythm as undeniable as the sun rising and setting. But here is the truth that almost no one ever talks about. Nobody decided this schedule for you based on human biology. No doctor prescribed it in the ancient world. No deep ancestral wisdom handed it down through our DNA. Eating 3 meals a day is not a law of nature. It is a story. And it is one of the most fascinating, bizarre, and commercially driven stories in all of human history. Let us go back. Way, way back. Around 23,000 years ago, on the shores of what is now the Sea of Galilee in Israel, there was a place called Oholoi. When archaeologists dug through the dirt there, they found the remains of small, brush-walled dwellings. Each one was built around a central hearth. Scattered near those hearths was evidence of over 140 different types of seeds and nuts. There were bones, too, from birds, fish, and small mammals. The people who lived here were pure hunter-gatherers. They ate whenever food was available, not 3 times a day, not twice a day, just whenever. There were absolutely no meal times because there was no guaranteed food supply. Some days, they hunted a large animal and feasted heavily. Other days, they found nothing and went hungry, fasting for long stretches. The very concept of a structured, daily eating schedule would have meant absolutely nothing to them. Eating was not a routine, it was a result. The result of a successful hunt, a lucky morning of foraging, or sheer desperation. Then something happened that changed the entire trajectory of the human species. Around 10,000 BCE, agriculture took hold in the Fertile Crescent, across parts of modern-day Iraq, Iran, and Turkey. For the very first time in human existence, people had a reliable, predictable food supply. They did not need to chase their food anymore. The food stayed put in the ground, so the people stayed put too. Permanent settlements formed. Cooking grew immensely more complex. Meals became larger and more communal. But even then, 3 structured meals a day did not exist. What people ate, and when they ate, still depended entirely on culture, geography, and the available daylight. Ancient Egypt gives us one of the earliest historical pictures of structured eating. Egyptians typically ate just 2 meals a day. They had a light morning meal, usually consisting of bread and beer, and a heavier evening meal featuring vegetables, lentils, and whatever protein was available. 2 meals, not 3. The ancient Greeks were a little closer to what we would recognize today. They had a small morning meal called akritisma, which was basically bread dipped in wine. Then came ariston, a midday meal, and finally deipnon, a more substantial evening gathering. But crucially, not everyone ate all 3, and these were not fixed, time-locked events. The Romans are perhaps the most surprising case of all. The Roman Empire was one of the most organized, rigidly structured civilizations the world had ever seen. You might expect them to have had a strict, mandatory meal schedule. They did not. In fact, the Romans were deeply suspicious of eating more than once a day. Historians explain that the Romans were obsessed with digestion and believed that eating multiple meals was simply a form of gluttony. Their primary massive meal was called cena, eaten around midday. A small morning snack existed, but it was barely treated as a real meal. This one main meal model stayed dominant across much of Europe for centuries. Then came the moment when European settlers arrived in the Americas. They were genuinely shocked by how Native Americans ate. According to historians, the settlers watched indigenous people eat in ways that seemed chaotic and lawless to them. Native Americans fasted when necessary, adjusted their food intake heavily with the changing seasons, and followed absolutely no fixed daily schedule. The Europeans, full of their own cultural bias, called this uncivilized. That profound bias would eventually help spread the strict 3 meals a day structure across the entire world, as they colonized and imposed their habits. So where exactly did the rigid 3-meal structure actually come from? The answer takes us to 16th century Europe, and a world that was just beginning to organize itself around the mechanical clock. The British Royal Navy was one of the very first large institutions to formalize 3 meals a day. Since at least the 1500s, the Navy served its sailors 3 set meals built entirely around the shipboard routine. A simple breakfast of ship's biscuits and salted meat, a midday lunch as the main meal, and a lighter dinner in the evening. The reasoning was not biological, it was entirely practical. Sailors needed fuel at predictable intervals. Physical naval work was relentless, and the feeding schedule had to exactly match the shifts. But what truly locked 3 meals a day into the lives of ordinary people was the Industrial Revolution. Starting around 1760 in Britain and spreading across Europe and North America over the following century, the Industrial Revolution fundamentally changed how human beings related to time itself. For the first time ever, large numbers of people were not working out in fields with loose, seasonal rhythms dictated by the sun. They were working inside dark factories with rigid, standardized hours. You clocked in and out at a fixed, non-negotiable time. You had one single break in the middle of the day. Breakfast before work, lunch at the midday whistle, dinner after the shift ended. It mapped perfectly onto the new industrial schedule. 3 meals a day was not a biological discovery. It was an organizational solution to the grueling demands of factory life. As cities grew massive and people moved away from farms, the morning meal became increasingly important. The word breakfast literally means to break the fast of the night before. Interestingly, in medieval Christian Europe, eating before morning mass was often highly discouraged. So breakfast as a regular, full meal was very slow to catch on. But skipping a morning meal while working a brutal 10 or 12-hour industrial shift was no longer a spiritual discipline. It was a deadly health hazard. Workers were passing out on the factory floor. The heavy morning meal became essential for survival. Dinner shifted entirely, too. Before industrialization, the main meal was eaten at midday when natural light was at its strongest. But as artificial lighting improved, and factories kept workers busy well into the late afternoon, the main meal was forced to migrate to the evening. By the mid-1800s, dinner after work had become the daily anchor for most people in Europe and the United States. Then, in the early 20th century, the final piece fell into place. Someone you might not expect helped cement breakfast as a daily, mandatory ritual: a serial entrepreneur named John Harvey Kellogg. Kellogg invented cornflakes as a bland health food. But through massive, aggressive marketing campaigns in the 1920s and 1930s, his company spread the idea that breakfast was the most important meal of the day. It was not pure science, it was pure commerce. Cereal companies desperately needed people eating breakfast every single morning, and their marketing worked flawlessly. Now here is the most important question of all. Does your biology actually want you to eat 3 times a day? The answer might surprise you. Inside every single human being is a circadian rhythm, your body's internal, 24-hour biological clock. Modern research shows that the specific timing of your meals heavily affects your blood glucose, insulin sensitivity, metabolism, and even the behavior of your fat cells at a microscopic level. In the morning, as the sun rises, your cortisol levels naturally spike, and your body becomes remarkably efficient at processing food. Insulin sensitivity is near its absolute peak, meaning carbohydrates and sugars are much more likely to be converted into usable energy instead of being stored as fat. But if you eat that exact same heavy meal late at night, the biological outcome changes dramatically. Because your body is preparing for sleep, your digestive system slows down. Blood sugar rises much higher and stays elevated. Sleep quality drastically worsens. Fat storage significantly increases. Even your hunger hormones, ghrelin and leptin, meticulously follow this circadian rhythm. In fact, your body begins preparing the digestive acids for meals before you even take the first bite. Scientists call this physiological food anticipation. Your biology is not passive. It learns your daily habits, predicts your routines, and adjusts its machinery around them. And that reveals something incredibly important. What matters most to human health is not necessarily the exact number of meals you eat, but when you eat them. Eating 2 meals, 3 meals, or even 4 smaller meals can all work reasonably well for the human body, as long as the vast majority of that food is consumed during daylight hours, when the body is metabolically prepared to process it. But biology and digestion are only part of the story. For more than 23,000 years, humans have gathered around food not just to survive, but to connect. Long before factories, office schedules, or serial advertisements ever existed, shared meals were exactly how early communities built. It is the brilliant, messy result of centuries of religion, agriculture, industry, commerce, and human physiology gradually shaping one another over time. Tonight, you will probably sit down for dinner, just like billions of people before you. But now you will know exactly what